Imagine this. Wee's powerhouse Bron Breakker dominating the ring, suddenly linked to none other than Hollywood legend Steven Seagal. Yes, you heard that right. An unexpected, shocking connection that no fan saw coming. Behind the lights, the cheers, and the chaos of the WWE arena lies a secret that could change everything you thought you knew about Bron Breakker's rise to fame. Today, we reveal the untold story-hidden alliances, backstage deals, and the surprising mentor who shaped his career. Stay tuned, because what you're about to see will leave you stunned. It started, as these things always do, not with a roar, but with a digital whisper. A single, grainy photograph uploaded to a forgotten forum, lost in the noise of the internet. The picture was Larissa Lusa, taken from across a crowded room, a gym, maybe, or a dojo, years ago. In it, two figures. One, unmistakably, was a younger Bron Breakker, pre-on-X, aura, power, and potential, looking less like a superstar and more like a college athlete, still finding his frame. The other figure was taller, draped in shadow, but the posture, the distinct silhouette, WIS, and Iniabru. It was Steven Seagal. The post was titled, "The Mentor." It was ignored for months, a digital ghost. But then, one slow Tuesday, a wrestling journalist with a deadline and a taste for the absurd found it. He quote-tweeted it with a simple, dismissive, "Well, this is a thing." He meant it as a joke. He had no idea what he was about to unleash. The internet, a sleeping dragon, stirred. What was this? A prank? A deep fake? Or was it the tip of an iceberg so bizarre, so profoundly strange, that no one had ever dared to look for it? For Bron Breakker, a man defined by legacy, by the Steiner name, by pure, unadulterated power, this was more than a joke. It was a question mark. He didn't need a narrative poison slipping into the well of his hard-earned reputation. The first domino had fallen. Within hours, the joke had metastasized. Well, this is a thing became 1,000 different reactions, and none of them were simple. The fan forums, the social media platforms, they erupted. It was a civil war of disbelief. On one side, the scoffers, the comedians, memes were born in an instant. Bron Breakker's signature spear was photoshopped, now being taught to him by a ponytailed Seagal. His intense promos were re-edited, dubbed over with nonsensical Aikido platitudes. The laughter was deafening. It was a circus. But on the other side, a more insidious reaction began to brew. The contrarians, the conspiracy theorists. What if it's true? They typed in all caps. What if Seagal, with his connections, secretly funded Bron's early training? What if the Steiners aren't the real story? This was the danger. It wasn't the laughter, it was the doubt. In the world of professional wrestling, perception is reality. A performer's aura is their lifeblood. Bron had cultivated an aura of primal, authentic aggression. This was the opposite. This was absurdity. This was a narrative he couldn't control. Backstage, at the next taping, the air was different. The usual handshakes and nods of respect were there, but they were followed by a sideways glance, a hidden smirk. The powerhouse of WWE was, for the first time, the punchline. In professional wrestling, the locker room is a shark tank. Respect is the only currency that matters, and it is earned through toughness, reliability, and, above all, authenticity. The Seagal story, once it breached the walls of the arena, became a test of that authenticity. The initial reaction, as the journalist had intended, was laughter. His peers, the other titans of the industry, ribbed him. "Hey, Bron! Gonna show us some Aikido tonight?" "Watch out, don't break a wrist." Bron, a professional, would grit his teeth, offer a forced smile, and focus on his work. But the joke didn't die. It lingered. The laughter became quieter, turning into whispers. Is he ... okay? This thing is really sticking to him. The producers, the writers, The agents, they saw the metrics. They saw the social media engagement. The Seagal connection was trending. And in the modern entertainment machine, a trend is a tool. Suddenly, the absurdity wasn't just a distraction. It was a potential angle. What if? One writer might have mused, we lean into it. But for Bron, this was a violation. His career, his legacy, was being discussed in the same sentence as a Hollywood punchline. The spear, the dog-faced gremlin, intensity it, was all being overshadowed by something he couldn't punch, something he couldn't suplex. There was an invisible weight pressing down on him every time he walked through the curtain. The story was too strange to ignore. Mainstream sports media, always hungry for a weird wrestling story, picked it up. Suddenly, Bron Breakker wasn't just answering questions about his next opponent or his championship ambitions. He was being asked on podcasts and in post-show scrums about Steven Seagal. Bron, can you comment on the photograph? Is there any truth to the rumors of a past association? Does this ... connection have any bearing on your in-ring style? Each question was a landmine. If he denied it vehemently, he'd be accused of he seems really defensive, the headlines would read. If he laughed it off, he'd be seen as dismissive, validating the joke. Breakker dodges the question. There was no right answer. He was trapped in a narrative fun. This was no longer about a silly rumor. It was about control. The media, the fans, and even the company itself were now co-opting his story. He was the son of Rick Steiner, the nephew of Scott. He was wrestling royalty. He was supposed to be the future. But in this moment, he was just the guy in the picture with Seagal. The frustration was visible. In the ring, his promos became more intense, more aggressive, almost desperate. He was fighting not just his opponent, but the ghost of the story that refused to die. As the fire raged, someone finally stepped forward to pour gasoline on it. He was a man no one in the wrestling world knew. A former disciple from one of Seagal's long-defunct martial arts ventures. He appeared on a small but growing investigative podcast. His voice was bitter, his motives unclear. He wasn't there to talk about Bron. He was there to talk about Seagal. He painted a picture of a man obsessed with true combat, a man who believed the choreographed world of professional wrestling was a disgrace, yet was simultaneously fixated on its mainstream appeal. He spoke of something called the Phoenix Initiative, Seagal's alleged and disastrously failed attempt to create a new hybrid wrestling promotion. A promotion that would blend real Aikido philosophy with the showmanship of sports entertainment. It sounded like a fantasy. But then, the man dropped the name. We were scouting, the voice on the podcast said. Seagal wanted legitimacy. He wanted real athletes, guys with believable backgrounds. He was obsessed with collegiate wrestlers, with MMA dropouts. And he was fixated on the Steiner legacy. He saw this kid, RECHSTEINER ... Before he was Breakker, he saw him as a perfect vessel. The podcast host was stunned. Are you saying Seagal mentored Bron Breakker? The man paused. I'm saying, he said, that a deal was offered. And I'm saying Bron was there. He was part of the project. The podcast interview changed the narrative from mockery to conspiracy. He was part of the project. The phrase was chilling. It implied contracts, secret dojos, and hidden alliances. But the truth, as it often is, was buried deeper. The source was, in fact, telling a version of the truth. There was a Phoenix Initiative, a laughable attempt by Seagal to use his fading star power to create a wrestling brand. And he was scouting. The infamous photograph wasn't a secret meeting. It was an ambush. Bron, fresh out of college, was training at a local gym. Seagal, flanked by an entourage, had entered the gym, a local haunt he sometimes used. He recognized the Steiner lineage, the raw potential. He had his disciples approach the young athlete. What the source didn't say, what he conveniently omitted, was Bron's reaction. According to those who were actually there, Bron listened patiently for 5 minutes as the bizarre, rambling pitch was made. He heard about the flow of energy and the warrior's path. Then he looked at the entourage, looked at Seagal, and simply said, "No, thank you. I'm a wrestler." He then picked up his gym bag and walked out, leaving the Hollywood icon standing in a stunned, offended silence. It wasn't an alliance. It was a rejection. A rejection that had clearly festered 4 years in the mind of the disgruntled disciple. The story was now unavoidable. It had reached the one place Bron had always hoped it wouldn't. His family. The Steiner name is not just a name, it's a coat of arms. It stands for Amateur Wrestling Championships, for no-nonsense brawling, for a terrifying, unpredictable intensity. Rick and Scott Steiner were not characters. They were forces of nature. They represented the realness that the industry craved. And now, that legacy was being stained by association. The silence from the family was, at first, deafening. No public statements, no tweets. But backstage, the pressure was immense. We can only imagine the phone call. Rick Steiner, a man of few words, asking his son, "What is this? What is this nonsense I'm hearing?" It wouldn't be anger. It would be something worse. Confusion. Disappointment. The Steiner legacy was built on breaking opponents, not on Hollywood hand-slapping. For Bron, this was the true crisis. The fans? He could ignore them. The media? He could deflect. But this cut to the core of his identity. He wasn't just Bron Breakker. He was a Steiner. And now, in the eyes of the world, and perhaps even in the eyes of his father, that name was linked with the very definition of phony. The weight of his legacy, once his greatest strength, now felt like an anchor, dragging him down into this sea of absurdity. It was Monday night. The lights were down. Bron Breakker's music hit, but he didn't storm to the ring. He didn't bark. He walked. He walked slowly, methodically, a microphone already in his hand. He stepped through the ropes, and the arena was silent, expectant. He wasn't in his ring gear. He was in a t-shirt and sweats. He looked exhausted. He looked human. For the past few weeks, he started his voice low. There's been a lot of talk, a lot of jokes, a lot of ... pictures. He paused, staring at the camera. "You all want to know about Steven Seagal." The crowd murmured. "You want to know if he was my mentor? If he taught me everything I know?" He let the tension build. "The truth is ... I met him once in a gym. He told me he could make me a star. He told me he could teach me the true way of combat. He told me my family's legacy was ... outdated." The arena booed. And do you know what I told him? Bron's voice started to rise, the familiar fire returning. I told him he was a joke. I told him he knew nothing about a real fight. And I told him that the Steiner name, the name he insulted, means more than he could ever understand. He was shouting now, the promo of his life pouring out. This isn't a connection. It's an insult, and I am done letting it be a joke. The promo was a seismic event. It was raw, it was real, and it was exactly what he needed. The wrestling media praised it as an all-time great shoot promo. The locker room respected him for addressing it head-on. The writers, seeing the explosive reaction, immediately pivoted. The Seagal story was no longer a joke. It was Bron's origin of defiance. The company, in its infinite wisdom, even tried to capitalize. They produced a t-shirt. No Aikido, just bark. It was a bestseller. For a time, it seemed like Bron had won. He had taken control of the narrative, turned the absurd into his armor. But something had changed. A subtle shift that only he could feel. The joke never truly died. In the digital age, nothing does. In the front rows, fans would still, occasionally, hold up a printed-out headshot of Steven Seagal. Chants of Seagal, Seagal would sometimes, briefly, echo in arenas when he was in a rest. He had cut the head off the snake, but the venom was still in the bloodstream. He had wanted to be the next great champion, a new chapter in the Steiner story. He had succeeded, but he was also, and would forever be, the man who had to spend 10 minutes on live television in front of the world, explaining that he was not, in fact, friends with Steven Seagal. And here, the story takes its final, quiet turn. The true twist isn't about the connection. The twist is about what we, the audience, demand from our performers. We live in an era of manufactured reality. We want our superstars to be larger than life, but we also crave the real story, the backstage drama, the gossip. We created the monster that Bron had to fight, the disgruntled disciple who started the rumor. He was irrelevant. The journalist who tweeted the photo? He was just doing his job. The true antagonist was the culture of digital curiosity itself. We, the fans, were the ones who found the idea of Bron Breakker and Steven Seagal in the same sentence so compelling, so hilarious, that we willed it into a crisis. We laughed at the memes. We clicked the links. We demanded an answer. The shocking connection wasn't a secret deal. The shocking connection was between a performer's reality and our endless, ravenous appetite for absurdity. Bron Breakker won his match. He won the championship. He secured his legacy. But in the process, he learned a lesson that his father and uncle never had to. In the modern ring, your toughest opponent isn't in front of you. It's in the ether. It's the story you can't control. And it's always, always waiting for its cue.